There's something I want to say today that isn't about productivity, or strategy, or even clarity in the way most people mean it. It's about how understanding actually arrives, because it doesn't arrive the way we're taught to expect. Most of us think understanding comes from getting the right explanation, from finally being told the correct rule, from someone smarter than us saying, "Here's how it works." But that's not how real understanding forms. Real understanding arrives when a wrong explanation quietly falls apart, and that only happens when a thought is allowed to finish. I want to tell you a small story. Someone I know avoided a simple topic for years, not because it was complex, but because it didn't make sense yet. Every time the subject came up, it felt noisy, confusing, easier to avoid than to resolve. Then one day, during a pause, nothing dramatic, everything became clear. Not because of a better explanation, but because one simple realization appeared. If I do what I think is required, the system contradicts itself. In that moment, the wrong model collapsed on its own. No argument, no persuasion, no effort, just relief. That's not learning by instruction. That's learning by coherence. And it turns out, this is how understanding works far more often than we realize. Let me make it more concrete. There's a well-known fact in science. Water boils at 212 degrees Fahrenheit, and no matter how much heat you apply, the temperature never goes higher. If you add more heat, the water doesn't get hotter. It boils more violently. And if you add enough heat, the water doesn't exceed the limit. It disappears. The system changes state. The temperature never rises, not because heat is missing, but because the old rules no longer apply. Understanding works the same way. You can apply more effort, more thinking, more explanation. But at some point, the wrong model doesn't improve. It vanishes. And what's left is understanding. This is why clarity so often feels like relief instead of achievement. You didn't gain something. You lost something that was no longer true. Here's the part that matters most. Understanding requires one condition above all others: the freedom to think without being rushed. Most people never get that. They're corrected too early, interrupted too soon, given answers before their own model has a chance to fail. So the wrong explanation survives, not because it's right, but because it was never allowed to finish. This is why clarity often appears only at the edge of exhaustion. Not because collapse is required, but because collapse is often the only time thinking is finally allowed to run its course. But extinction isn't the requirement. Incoherence is. And incoherence doesn't need pressure. It needs space. This is where the clarity model comes in. Clarity is not information. Clarity is not certainty. Clarity is not control. Clarity is understanding. And understanding is the moment a system makes sense without effort. The moment nothing needs defending. The moment the questions lose their urgency. That's why the next best step becomes obvious when the noise is removed. Not because someone told you what to do, but because nothing else fits anymore. One last thing. Understanding rarely happens alone. Most people need a listener, not someone to correct them, not someone to reassure them, but someone who can hold space without rushing the outcome. That's what a muse really is. Not inspiration, permission. Permission for a thought to finish. If you've ever felt like clarity was just out of reach, if you've ever avoided a question because it felt too tangled, if you've ever sensed that the answer wasn't missing, just unfinished, you're not broken, you're mid-thought. And when the noise quiets, understanding will stabilize on its own. It always does.